Ladies and gentlemen, this is Honest Graft. Please welcome founder and CEO, Faith Wins, Connelly, Nevada RNC Committeewoman, Sigal Chattah, and your moderator, Vice Chair, AFPI Center for Election Integrity, Hogan Gidley.
Hey, how's it going? Go ahead, please. Good afternoon, CPAC. How's everybody doing? How good is Nigel Farage, everybody? You know, I don't know if you picked up on this, but something he said, that he was called Billy No Mates in England, which I guess means he didn't have any friends. What's ironic about that is he's from England, but he has so many friends here in this room and in this country because he knows what so many on the left don't know, that it matters to more than just America who the President of the United States is.
Amen.
Speaking of elections and who the next President of the United States will be, it's fascinating when we have conversations about elections and election integrity, and I've got a great panel with us, with y'all here this afternoon. But you're here in this room today because you know that elections have consequences. You're well aware of the fact that good policies mean good results, bad policies mean bad results. You know, we used to have to point all the way back to Reagan to say, look how good it was in the 80s. Folks, we had record-setting success in record-setting time just 3 years ago because of what Donald Trump was able to do by implementing America First policies that really improved the lives of all Americans, regardless of race, religion, color, or creed. And you know that in order to get those policies back, we have to win elections. And that's getting increasingly difficult to do when we see all the instances of fraud and irregularities, illegalities, anomalies that happen across this country in various states. But I'm here to tell you, elections this time around are going to be a whole lot better off than they were before because of so many groups that have been working around the country in the states to make sure that laws are passed to protect legal votes and legal voters. So that's good news. So you can clap for that. You can clap more than that. Oh, it's got me into a weird cackling Kamala Harris. Now I'm going to start laughing. Okay, but I want to talk to the panel about so many things you guys are experiencing in the states and around this country as well. And Sigal, you and I were back there talking. And by the way, I said, how do you want me to pronounce your name? How do I pronounce your name? And she said, it's Sigal, like Steven Seagal, and Chattah, like Nevada.
You got it right.
Well, there you go.
You got it right.
And since I used to do weather and local TV, which there was no YouTube then, so don't go looking for this, but I know it's Nevada, not Nevada. So there you go. So starting with you, some news broke out of Nevada today that I want you to tell the crowd about, and talk about the landscape there, because obviously you have a mail-in situation going on in Nevada. People are concerned. People have questions. Tell us what you see the state of play is in Nevada.
So in Nevada, the latest story that broke was, in fact, as many in this room know, the Nevada state legislature passed a law in 2021 to hold a presidential preference primary. We knew that it was not going to be binding upon the party. So the Nevada GOP decided to go with a caucus because the caucus is controlled the way we wanted to do it, with voter ID, paper ballots, same-day voting, no mail-in ballots,
yes.
Everything that we share as Republicans and that is part of the Republican ideology is what the Nevada GOP wanted to do. Turns out that everything that we had anticipated was wrong with having a presidential preference primary with mail-in ballots, with 2 weeks of voting, and no voter ID actually turned out to be accurate. Why? Because this week a huge story broke in Nevada that thousands of mail-in ballots were recorded when people never mailed in their ballots for their presidential preference primary. So for the last 3 years, they've been calling us election deniers. They've been saying that it's rigged elections. And at the end of the day, we caught them in the act. And what they're saying is the Nevada Secretary of State issued an apology today for the glitch in the system. and the audience is going nuts.
Yeah,
the glitch in the system. But you know what we really need to understand is that we had an outcry from our base over the last week about this glitch. And the question, the million-dollar question that we all have is, what would have happened had we not caught that glitch?
Right.
And how long did that glitch go on for? Is it a 2020 glitch? Is it a 2022 glitch?
Right.
So now that we caught it, they wouldn't have fixed it if we wouldn't have such a public outcry. So I think the moral of the story is, let's go back to paper ballots, same-day voting, no mail-in ballots, and everything that we did in the caucus and brought Trump a 99% victory in the caucus.
Yeah, sure. You know, interestingly enough, you mentioned this, and I have to say it. You know, you can ask questions. You ought to be able to ask questions about the outcome of elections in this country. I mean, remember in 2016, it was your patriotic duty to ask about the outcome of that election. In fact, you worked for Russia if you dared not question what happened in 2016. So just asking questions, I think we should be able to do in this country. And there are plenty of questions to ask, but I think a lot of answers are happening too, because what the left hates is transparency, whether they're trying to trans your kids behind your back or teach critical race theory or what they're teaching in our colleges and universities. They don't like transparency. They definitely don't like it with election integrity. So it stands to reason they wouldn't want people monitoring drop boxes and are suing in several states to prevent that. But a state, I think, that has done a pretty good job is the state of South Carolina, Chad, where you're from. I'm from South Carolina.
That's right.
So just a state that's decidedly red, that has been on lock for a while, but you want to expand some of what you've been doing in that state on a national level into other states.
That's right.
And so while we're up here and you and I talk the same, and there's a whole lot of country coming to town with me and Chad sitting up here, explain to this group what you see as one of the, I guess, major voting blocks and the holes in our ground game and who we target, how we get out to vote. When 40 million evangelicals don't vote every cycle, if they voted, we'd never lose an election.
Never lose an election.
Never. So explain a little bit what you're up to.
Yeah, look, I'm sick of losing. Y'all sick of losing? We've been way too good at losing for the last few cycles, and all I know we can prove is we spent $1 billion last cycle. And I know this, the experts can't find the low propensity Christian voter, the 30, 35, 40, 45 million people sitting in churches who don't vote. That's a real problem. We spent $1 billion, so all the digital, all the TV, they can't reach them. I spent the last 15 years of my life totally focused on reaching the pastor, building relationships that are authentic. I don't want to work for somebody. I don't want to work with somebody that doesn't have an authentic pastor outreach. And you can't do it by some faraway digital ad saying, oh, you got to go vote. George Barna, somebody that's a friend and does the Barna research, says one of the biggest reasons people vote is somebody they respect says this is a big deal. That's the pastor. And so we spend all our time trying to reach that 40 or 45 million people. A lot of them are registered, Hogan, but they're too busy. They're raising kids. They're taking their kids to the soccer matches, and they're not going to go vote. We have to go after those people. And so I believe, and we've spent our entire time with Faith Wins, working in the states to build relationships with pastors from multiple denominations to do two things. Number one, register everybody. Don't leave anybody unregistered. Register everybody. Number two, teach and devote biblical values. Rinse and repeat. That's it. And we do small meetings that become big meetings, that become small meetings to identify and find those pastors who will lead the way. We empower them. And you know, there's something really powerful about it. The experts across the river and with the party, the committees, I've sat in the rooms with them. I was a state party chairman. You listen to them. Oh, yeah, we can reach them. No, you can't. Some of you guys can't identify a church in pictures. We need people who actually know what a church is, who've opened their Bible before, who actually are believers and Christians, and they can talk to those pastors who are leading the way. And we tell them, look, Jesus ain't running, which is a South Carolina thing. Jesus ain't running. We're always voting for the lesser of two evils. And you kind of look at not person or party all the time. You got to look at policies and principles that align with the biblical worldview. That's our pitch. And so we find that pastors who hear other pastors, they get empowered, they get activated, and they're not just data points, they're multipliers. I did a meeting right before the New Hampshire primary with 38 pastors in the room, and one of those pointy-headed expert consultants was with me. And I said, your problem is you walk in here and you didn't think your candidate should be here. It was a candidate that's not in the race anymore. And they said, well, there's just 38 pastors here. I said, Yeah. But that pastor there has 1,200 in his church. And see that guy right there? He's got 5 campuses. So you think these guys are data points, they're multipliers, and we're missing it because we're not being authentic, and that's what our ministry does, is we want to reach those pastors.
Right. And Chad and I actually did a little work together in Virginia for a guy named Governor Glenn Youngkin, kind of behind the scenes, under the radar in some of these churches. And as I recall, via Zoom and other ways, we were in 312 churches, registered 77,000 people. Y'all, Youngkin only won by 65,000. Yeah. So I'm not saying we did it all up on the stage. There are a lot of folks and a lot of things that go into winning and losing elections. But the fact is, finding those people, getting them registered, and getting them to the polls. That's how this works. More involvement matters. Now, back to Nevada. We talked about this backstage, about getting involved at the local level. You can effectuate the most change, the more local the government. Mike Huckabee taught me that years ago. And so in Nevada, get these people kind of fired up, give them some information, some hope, because a lot of what we hear is so bad and so negative, but there are some good things happening with people signing up to be poll watchers and poll workers and door knockers and ballot chasers and ballot harvesters where they can. So talk a little bit about what you guys are doing over there too.
So March 1st, the Nevada GOP is launching No Excuse Nevada, which is literally, it is a grassroots movement, and where we will literally send people out to have them work as poll workers, poll watchers. We saw in this last legislative session our poll watchers' wings clipped with all this, I call it election interference regulation. And so what we want to do is we want to make sure that we have Republicans work as poll watchers, as poll workers. Another thing that we want to make sure that they do is early voting. Nevada is an early voting state. We can no longer wait until voting day to get out there. We have to start beating them at their own game. Ballot harvesting. Nevada was one of the first states that decriminalized ballot harvesting in 2021. So until we change the laws in Nevada, we have to go out there and harvest ballots on day one. Right. And we have to continue until Election Day. So No Excuses Nevada is really that movement that activates the grassroots. And I want to tell you something, not because I'm from Nevada, but I really believe that Nevada has the best grassroots in the Nevada GOP.
That's good.
So,
well, for a state known for gambling, you're not really leaving much to chance. You want everyone to get out and do what they got to do, right?
We put everybody to work at the Nevada GOP. Let me tell you.
That's good.
Especially me.
And you know, something you hit on, being in the rooms and seeing what's going on. Folks, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. You have to get involved and be in these rooms to see what's going on, have the eyes so they know. And Chad, one of the things you worked on was when you got people and you started registering them, you kind of gave them the all shucks, what else can we do? And they all want to get involved because they're all fired up. And you said, hey, here's an idea. Get involved at the local party. Go wherever you want to go, or 501c3, but get involved nonetheless.
Yeah, you know, and we were amazed too. This kind of was a byproduct of doing the voter registration. We picked out the places that liberals had won by a little bit, and we thought, let's run up the score. That's our whole plan. Let's go to the places that, let's just run up the score. Let's get all those, you know, discouraged people. And out of that, the 312 churches that did the registration, people said, what do we do? I said, I tell you what, you're concerned about election integrity. Yeah. So we started recruiting poll workers, watchers in Virginia. It's called sworn election officers. We recruited 1,343 people in churches. Here was what's great. They didn't see them coming. These were Sunday school classes, y'all. These weren't political hacks. They weren't experts. They weren't consultants. They didn't work for the campaign or the committees. They were people at Maple Street Baptist and Calvary Chapel down the street. And I just wrote a little 3x5 card. We're here to pray for you. Want to pray with you. What can we do to help? And by the way, we'd like to see a copy of all the new registrants since last Friday night at midnight. Blew them away. Blew them away. One day they called and I said, look for two things. People over 100 that can vote, that voted. Not that they can't vote, Hogan, but it's a flag. Did y'all agree?
Come on now.
It's a flag. Or more than 6 registered in a household. These are not trained experts. These are church people. One day they called and said, Chad, we found a house that 17 people registered in. What do you think? I said, that's a really big house. Why don't y'all run out there and see what it is? It was a field. No structure. The first election commission official that Jason Miyares indicted was that lady, because that was going on. We looked in Michigan. We separated it by hundreds. We found the first 200 names, over 100. We found online obituaries for 67 of them. So I know there's no cheating and there's no fraud, but you got to have eyeballs on it. We believe, no secret sauce, like you said, no silver bullets. We believe if you get the churches involved, they've never done this before. The 1,343, only 2 had ever done poll watching. Y'all, there are God-fearing, flag-waving, tax-paying Americans who love this nation, and they're sick and tired of what's going on, but you got to talk to them authentically. So we're going to be in every state we can possibly afford to be in to find those pastors, to embolden them to say, I want to get involved.
There are a lot of reputations floating around out there about people from the South, but have you ever seen someone from the South that talks faster than Chad Connelly? It's unbelievable. All right. One more question for you as we begin to wrap up here. I saw this on your Twitter bio, and I just had to ask you about it. You say you're a based mama.
I am.
You're a hashtag firebrand.
Firebrand and American nationalist.
That's exactly. You want to be involved in this country and make her a better place for generations to come. Tell us, do you see that happening in this upcoming election? Do you see that happening in Nevada? Can we all work together to get it done?
Absolutely. I think there are definitely things that we could do to ensure that these election interference laws, that I call them, can be changed. If you want to see all this bad legislation repealed, what you have to do is support your state legislatures.
Yes.
If you flip your legislatures red, every bad law on the books will go away. And that's where it starts, really. So,
Chad, last question for you, too. You're talking about the pastor networks. You're talking about a lot of different states. Are you seeing those groups not just form, but wanting to get active in some of the key swing states?
Man, I'm telling you, God's people are waking up. I was in Wisconsin. I could tell the story in every state. This guy came up. We were doing our meeting. He said, I'll let you use the church because your buddy asked. I'm pretty skeptical. I said, Pastor, what are you skeptical about? He said, well, just the whole political thing. I said, do you think I want you to be political? He said, yeah, I guess so. I said, no, I want you to be biblical. He said, I'm not sure I understand. I said, stick around. Listen to me talk. He said, I got to go. He stayed out there the entire time. He comes up to me afterwards. This is in a key spot in a place like Wisconsin, swing state. He grabs me by the arm, and after I get done, he says, I want to be ground zero for everything you do in Wisconsin. It gives me goosebumps right now. If we just wake up the church a little bit, just a little bit, 40 to 45 million non-voting Christians. And I know people want to go after this bright, shiny object, whatever's sexy and fun and all that stuff. Go find the low propensity voters in the churches, and the way to access them is the pastors through relationships.
Absolutely, Chad. You know, you and I have talked about this too, but God ordained the family, He ordained the church, but He also ordained the state. Amen. And it's time for those churches to wake up and get involved, and I'm sure they will, thanks to the efforts you're doing. Folks, as we begin to wrap this panel, I just want to say something personally here, because coming to CPAC for me is such a blessing to be a small part of what Matt and Mercy have built. I remember when it used to be over the Omni Showroom years and years ago, much smaller, didn't do anything internationally, and now this thing has grown to a behemoth because it's a movement that's not going to stop. It's only growing every single year. You know, I was born in a very small town in North Carolina. I was raised in a smaller town in Arkansas, lived in South Carolina 20 years. Great relationship with my father, but my parents got divorced when I was about 5 years old. I was raised by a single woman, for all intents and purposes. I don't have a fancy last name like, Kennedy or Bush or Clinton. Thank God, my last name's Clinton. But
I wondered.
But yeah, thank you. But I'm just saying, I'm a nobody from nowhere. I shouldn't be able to work in an administration for a president of the United States. But as Principal Deputy Press Secretary in the White House under Donald Trump, folks, I got to walk into that White House every single day, go right through those gates and walk down that world-famous colonnade, right there by the Rose Garden. You know, the white colonnade. You remember Reagan walking by there in his tan suit with all those leaders? I got to walk there every day. I'd put my hands on the columns just to feel it. And I got to walk in there every day, get in my office that was from here to that clock, 20 paces away from the Oval Office. I got to go into that incredible room every single day, stand in front of the Resolute desk and give the President of the United States advice. Now, he never took any of it. But that is not the point. The point is, only in this country would someone like me get to give it. And I am supremely confident. There are people around the world who use our American flag and walk through their streets chanting things like liberty and freedom because they know what everybody in this room knows, what the left doesn't know. That this country is still a beacon of hope and of strength and of democracy and of goodness all over the world. And I am supremely confident with people in this room, people on this stage, getting involved in our elections, it's going to stay that way, not just for this generation, but for generations to come. Thank you very much for today. Thank you. God bless.